Oh boy, I wonder what game I should play on that old Steam right there. Oh, I hope this platform doesn't get hacked, because if it does, there could be 89 million Steam users whose information is probably on the dark web. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, you probably have read crazy headlines like 89 million Steam account details just got leaked. 89 million Steam accounts reportedly leaked. I feel like everyone just grabs each other's headlines, okay? There's nothing crazy here. But to give you an idea, this is some pretty scary information. You might have woken up and you're like, oh my God, I use Steam. I use Steam. You guys, I'm sure that some of you gamers watching, especially if you play on the PC, probably use Steam. And I'm here to guide you through how scary this hack could be. So I really researched it. And to be honest with you, it took me down a rabbit hole of, I would say, information that I really feel like needs to be demystified, all right? So first off, let's investigate where this hack database is sitting. Now, for this, you have to go to the good old-fashioned dark web, or really the clear web version of dark web hacker forums. Now, there's plenty of hacker forums. I've talked about them in the past. And generally speaking, you have to sneak onto some of these hacker forums, okay, because they're very exclusive. You need to register for them, be accepted by administrators. So a lot of researchers, just people in general, kind of sneak their way on here just to see what's being traded. And a lot of the stuff that's being traded is obviously illegal. So on one of the forums, one user known as Machine1337, with the most AI photograph that I've ever seen as their profile picture. Wow, they really have a Borderlands 4 gameplay deep dive. That's interesting. But anyways, they have priced 89 million records for Steam. You might be wondering, how much would somebody charge for that, Muda? Would it be $1,000, $10,000, $100, $1 million? No. It's a simple 5,000 USD sum that we're charging, ladies and gentlemen. So yes. Now, they also provided 3,000 something samples for anybody to download and sort of pick through if they wanted to. But obviously, I don't really think that is the important aspect, okay? If it claims that 89 million users have been violated, then you probably should change your passwords, right? Now, again, if you're somebody who's wondering, what do I do during a data breach? Just change your password, okay? And generally speaking, if you're wondering if your accounts are going to get hacked, as far as I know, nobody is hacking anybody's Steam accounts to this day. As I'm recording this video, and I've waited a little bit, there hasn't been anybody's Steam accounts that have been compromised, from my understanding, because of this crazy hack. Hell, none of us can even verify if the information, even in the sample platter, is an actual hack. None of us can even find that original posting anymore. But somehow this got enough hoopla that I guess all of the news gaming media kind of talked about it a little bit, okay? It was some serious stuff. In fact, it was also used as part of this gaming war, this console war between each other. I was told by PC Massive Rejects and the Xbots. God, man. Just... You know what? Let's go. That only Sony gets hacked. So not only is PC gaming a ripoff, it's even less secure than being on PSN. Neat! Now, I always like it when people use this kind of shit as always, like in their insane video game console war. But I'm just gonna straight up say it, okay? Doesn't matter what service you use, okay? Whether it be Valve, whether it be Epic, whether it be Apple, whether it be Sony, whether it be Microsoft. Assume that everything can just fucking get hacked, dude. What are you, stupid? What are you, dumb? Anything can get hit. You just have to be prepared for it. And generally, all you can really do here is, well, if your passwords are out there, change your passwords. Make sure two-factor authentication is enabled. I guarantee if you have two-factor authentication enabled, basically through the Steam Guard app on your phone, you'll probably be just fine. But we have to really understand if people have actually been hacked and their passwords have actually been leaked. So I wanted to go and find the source of this person. Like, where was the source of all of this news, right? Where was this hoopla coming from? And it seems like this hoopla came from Mellow Online. So yesterday, an alleged major Steam data breach occurred, okay? Alleged is alleged. 89 million user records, so roughly 2/3 of all Steam accounts, because Steam, yes, is actually that big. These datasets are being sold for over $5,000 on what appears to be a site akin to MIPT, MIPT alongside their sister sites as a forum site we at Steam Sentinels have warned Steam about for years of instances involving developer blackmailing, review manipulation, green light boosting, and other dodgy activities. Which is true, there's a lot of forums that exist, generally speaking, to actually I would say spook the shit out of the people. So it's not like Mellow Online is spreading some sort of, complete misinformation. It might be a little bit overblown, personally speaking, but yeah, Steam has a lot of problems. And I would say that if you're somebody on PC gaming scared, remember, Valve is still an organization that makes some pretty big mistakes on Steam, okay? Literally earlier this year, Valve allowed a game known as Pirate Fi to exist on their storefront, okay? So it was a free-to-play game, you downloaded it, and obviously from the screenshot, it looks like, your standard survival Unity made in like a 24 hours kind of slop game, But there was something dastardly about Pirate Fi. It contained actual, password-stealing malware, info-stealing malware, which ultimately meant that if you ran Pirate Fi for even just a little bit, your information got stolen. And obviously, Valve could only come out and basically tell people, because they had to, that if you launch this game on Steam, or the Steam account of the developer for this game uploaded actual builds that contained suspected malware. So if you played this specific build, it's likely that those malicious files launched on your computer. So that's really what a company has to do when you get screwed. Now, obviously, Valve hasn't done this at all for any of this. In fact, the information that was released by good old Mellow Online was actually updated later. They said that it suggests, basically from their analysis, that this Steam data breach is not actually a breach of Steam. So we haven't hacked Steam, but rather they went to the supply chain, okay? Somebody in the supply chain for this stuff, somewhere in their actual software pool, right, was hacked. So basically, with this evidence that I guess they confirmed, it seems like the leak data included real-time SMS logs. So your text message log, you know what I mean? Which are basically logs that I guess Steam sends out when they're doing two-factor authentication. You know when they send a 6-digit number to your phone and it's put this into the little box and you can sign in? Yeah. So they mentioned one of the vendors that Valve was apparently using called Twilio, which is basically a company that, is used for sending those 2FA codes. Well, surprisingly, in amongst all this, even Valve came out and they were like, whoa, hold on, pal. We don't even use this software. What's going on? And of course, ladies and gentlemen, all of this led to people alleging that this may have just been fake fucking news. So, ultimately at all this, ladies and gentlemen, I think what we came out to was a massive hoopla. And, even I was asked about, it's like, Moody, you going to talk about the Steam data breach? I would have to confirm the data breach to entirely talk about it. And the only reason I'm talking about it right now is that I feel like I need to demystify some of this stuff. No, it doesn't seem like anywhere that Valve has actually been hacked in any of this regard. In fact, even from the information uploaded to this hacker forum can't exactly entirely be confirmed. Now, of course, even the fellers over at Valve decided to come out and go, you might have seen reports of leaks of older messages. So they started to dig into the source. What they've actually said is we've examined the sample. So Valve themselves looked at the 3 million something accounts that were sampled out and they were like, nope, nothing was breached. We're digging into the source, which is compounded by the fact that any SMS message are unencrypted in transit and routed through multiple providers on the way to the phone. The leak consists of older text messages that include one-time codes that were only valid for 15-minute time frames, so basically the codes that we were talking about, the 2FA stuff. The leak data did not associate the phone numbers with the Steam account because they're just random numbers, but they don't know what Steam account issued those numbers to be sent out. So none of those things could be connected. Old text messages cannot be used to breach the security of your Steam account because after 15 minutes, those codes are effectively useless. And given the age of the stuff in that leak, nothing there was actually going to be used. So even Valve says you don't really need to change your passwords or phone numbers, but it is a good reminder that you should probably treat anything seriously in this situation. And also, dummy, please set up two-factor authentication, please God. But I think the important thing that came out of this is reminding you, the user, Just keep two-factor authentication enabled. Now let's say that, millions of passwords were actually leaked out. Well, the reality of that would be if you were using your password, like let's say you use the same password for like, I don't know, 30 websites. Well, if your Steam password gets hacked, well, 29 other websites now also have your leaked password as well too. Which is one of the reasons why you should probably have been using a password manager anyways, and there's no reason to not fucking use a password manager in 2025. Bro, when modern smartphones have built-in password managers caked right into the operating system at this point, you, the user, really don't have an excuse for not using one anyways and having a randomly generated password for every single site that you go to. Especially when logging in usually just requires a very quick biometric, or just looking into a password manager list and typing that into a fucking dialog box, okay? It's literally that easy to make sure you're never in the actual headache space of any of this. Every time a data breach occurs nowadays, I don't really care. I will say that probably 7-8 years ago at this point, I actually did have a pretty serious situation with a data breach where, it almost put my YouTube channel, it almost put like Google account at risk because I had unfortunately been using some similar passwords. But that was the day where I spent, I would say like an hour to 2 hours of my time, and I never after that period ever had to worry about a singular data breach anyways, because I was always using different passwords, and I also had every single authenticator that I could ever have enabled on my smartphone, which made worrying about this kind of shit so needless. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you are a Steam user and you woke up worried today, I wouldn't really care. Now, I think at the end of all this, what's important to talk about is like, how do you verify or how do you confirm any kind of misinformation? The reality of it is looking into this for more than, I would say, 5 minutes showcases that it's probably not true that this happened. Somebody probably put up a fake breach onto a hacker website. And, now it's basically been reported that, one of the biggest gaming, social networks has actually apparently suffered a data breach. And it doesn't really seem that way. And it might seem like, Mood, are you being paid by Valve to like cover them? No, I'm not. I'm actually speaking at this purely from a reasonable standpoint, right? Like a lot of the information that I've been seeing, a lot of the actual, reporting that I've been seeing, a lot of the depths and a lot of the dark web corners that I've dove into have basically shown that nothing here is truly verifiable. And a lot of people using this as a way to delegitimize the security of one place just kind of shows you where the, it kind of shows you like where the priorities of some people lie. It's not so much in education and like general security as much as it is getting an own over somebody. So, whether you're somebody on Valve or whether you're on Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo, you should be taking any of these breaches seriously. And when you compare this to like previous things in the past, to sort of defend Sony as well too, I've seen a lot of people say like PlayStation, I would never go to PSN. They always get hacked. Like every week they get hacked. And it's not even fucking true, right? Like one of the biggest hacks that Sony actually had was all the way back in 2011. I'm sure some of you guys remember it. The PlayStation Network went down for a little bit. We got some free games. But it was at that point that, millions of users' personal information got leaked out. Now, even back then, when the Sony hack that occurred, right, and people's personal information was effectively, like, available to download, one of the worst hacks, one of the worst breaches, I would say, in, computer history, even the passwords, according to Sony, were not necessarily encrypted, but they were, however, transformed using a hashing function. But the thing is, it's still ultimately a huge problem that Sony had actually went through. And it really absolutely clearly eroded any trust that I think people had. And obviously you can see that it eroded trust because even in 2025, when Sony clearly doesn't operate in this fashion anymore, they obviously have upgraded their security since, people are still obviously, labeling Sony to be insecure, just because of what happened back in 2011. A lot of these services get better over time, and generally the landscape of security has evolved so much across the board that I don't think you really have to worry much about hackers getting access to some of these crazy services because of how many millions of people use them since the days of 2011, 2010. I mean, you got to remember, gaming has jumped exponentially, right? There's more, normies that are jumping into this hobby day by day, and they're putting in more and more of their sensitive information. And so a lot of these companies really don't want to be the next, I guess you could say, Sony in this situation, right? That has to live with this absolute black stain on them, you know, basically throughout the rest of time at this point. Nobody will really forget this until much, much more time has passed. But yeah, Steam did not get hacked per se. In fact, we can't even verify if anything that came out of this hack was completely legitimate. But I guess the lining over here is you shouldn't be using this as like ways to own on each other. I guess if anything, when scares like this happen, just remember to use a different password for every single service and make sure your fucking two-factor authentication is enabled. As long as all of that functions and all of these basic, and I mean basic security things are met, you really don't have to worry about pretty much goddamn anything. Which is why, honestly, I looked at this whole situation as a big giant hoopla. If you have to be worrisome about anything, it's probably the free-to-play dog shit that shows up on Steam every now and then. Because as Valve has shown, sometimes they do just let malware slip right through the cracks. And if you run it on your system, that has a bigger impact on stealing your passwords, your personal information, than Steam just getting hacked and tens upon tens of millions of user records being allegedly leaked. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. I am out.